Man United earned a respectable point at Old Trafford against Arsenal, but let's be honest, there's two major tactical issues that Amorim must fix to transform Man United's season. In this episode, we'll be breaking down the biggest problem with Man United's attack right now, and the real reason why Amorim had no choice but to sit deep against Arsenal. And there's one player that may have finally found his best role under Ruben Amorim. Welcome to A Game of Two Halves, and if you enjoy this content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get straight into it. If there's one thing this game proved, is that Man United are still best suited to playing on the counter-attack. But it's their build-up that needs a huge amount of work for them to transform their season. And the main issue with this Man United team is that they still haven't built those patterns of play from the back, the rotation of positions, and the depth of options for the player on the ball. And what Amorim loves to do is he loves to push the middle centre-back higher up into midfield and build up. One is probably one where he doesn't want two players on the same line in terms of Lindelof and the goalkeeper. And two, it creates another passing option, another way for them to get out against a high press. But there's a problem with this. It's that the middle centre-back doesn't usually have the technique, the ability on the ball to be able to deal with it under pressure or find the forward passing option. As you can see here, Lindelof has now moved up into the centre midfield spot as De Ligt has the ball. De Ligt passes that ball out wide to Mazraoui. But you can see the issue here in terms of having that centre-back in that position. Garnacho makes a little spin in behind. You could drop it over the top, but I just don't expect Lindelof to be the player to have that vision, the passing ability to just dink that into the channel. Because what this thing actually does, this tactic, is it allows Bruno, Casemiro to move higher up. But the problem with that is there's not as many options on the ball. But hey, not a big problem at this moment in time. He recycles it back to Mazraoui and he passes it back out to De Ligt. Now they've gone out to the other side and Onana has the ball. And again, this is where I expect a bit more from the double pivots, especially someone like Casemiro who's now moved alongside Lindelof. And as Onana has that ball, he recycles it out to Yoro, who then passes it out wide to Dalot. And look at Casemiro's position here. And I don't know if this is a coaching issue. I don't know what he's been told tactically, so it's hard to judge an individual player. But for me, that player has to be closer. He has to be offering a bounce option who then can bounce it back out to Yoro, and then they may be able to get out the other side and try and play through there. But this is the same tactic that has happened time again. They play this long ball from Dalot. If you remember Antonio Conte in the Premier League, he loved doing this. He loved drawing the opposition over to this side, and then the opposition strikers would make opposite movements, and then they'll play a direct ball into those strikers and have link play off those two players. But this is not anything near that. And as Dalot sort of hoists that ball up to the strikers, it's Bruno Fernandes battling in an aerial duel against Declan Rice. He actually wins this one. He doesn't want to get the ball. He just tries to use his physicality to push Rice underneath the ball. It works. But then you got another aerial duel battle or physical battle with Xerxes and Gabriel. And there's only one winner in that situation. And I've seen this time and time again in the last few Man United games that I've analysed. And they need to find more patterns of play, more rotations, more depth of options for the player on the ball. But the problem isn't only when they're trying to build up from the back from the goalkeeper. It also occurs when they have settled possession in the opposition half and they're trying to beat that mid to low block. And as you can see here, Yoro has the ball and they had that sort of settled state. You know, they know where to be when they're on the ball. But that sort of rotation, the fluidity, trying to find those spaces, those gaps to receive, it's just not there. Xerxes, just playing up top, you know, he's used to playing as a false nine from that position. He could drop here. And I think Arsenal are trying to trap them here, but he can just draw players away from their position and create avenues of attack down the wide areas. But he doesn't do it. He stays where he is. It's not a huge issue. And if you progress it onwards, he rotates it out to that right-hand side. And this is where it gets even worse. The right wing back, Garnacho, Casemiro, Eriksen, Fernandes, all on the same line. There's no depth to their attack. There's no player that's a bit higher up making running behind. Can Garnacho spin, make a run into the channel? Can Casemiro drop a little bit deeper? Can Eriksen move over to that right-hand side and help out with that attack down that side? Can Fernandes make a deep run in behind, in between the centre-backs? There's nothing that occurs here. They all stay on the same line, and I can understand why De Ligt has to rotate this ball back out to Lindelof. But as Lindelof receives the ball, you can already see his issue. You know, and for me, I don't know if this is an Amorim issue or a player issue, but for me, this is an Amorim issue. He has to coach what they should be doing in and out of the structure, because you can see Lindelof already with his arms out. You know, they should know what happens from here. If you saw how Arsenal built from the back all the way through to that final third, they all knew where to be. They progressed the ball quite comfortably into those attacking third areas. They just didn't have that clinical nature to be able to create chances or take their chances where they came. But Man United struggled just to build the way through the thirds. And it came to the situations like this where Lindelof's panicking on the ball now. He could just pass his ball out to Yoro, but he plays just a simple pass into Casemiro who's not really ready for it. Rice reads the triggers, nicks it in front of Casemiro, and then Arsenal are away on the counter-attack. And it's this little situation here where can the players have a bit more fluidity? Can they have more freedom to move as and where they need to? You know, Eriksen in that number 10 position, he's not one that's going to press. He doesn't have speed, but he's a technician. He's one that likes to find space. Can he have that freedom with Fernandes to find space, go to the other side of the pitch and help out down that side? It's very static, very robotic from this Man United team. And you can see how much of a problem this is for Ruben Amorim and Man United when you look at the attacking threat timeline from the game. You know, Arsenal have a great defensive record, but at home, at Old Trafford, you expect some sort of threat from this Man United team, but there's absolutely nothing in the first half. And you can see most of the threat comes in that second half after they scored that goal from Fernandes and the game's opened up a little bit. And you can see from the XG timeline from the game, you know, only 2 shots on goal in that first half, 1 on target, and it was a free kick from Bruno Fernandes. But then you can see as the game opens up, this is where their sort of strengths come to the front. You know, they had the numerous chances on goal. Pretty much all of them were on the transition, on the counter-attack. And that's how this team is set up. In that Ten Hag sort of system, they're set up with individual moments, you know, exploiting space on the counter. But when there's a deep, low, mid-block, whatever you want to call it, and they have to build out from the back, they just don't have the patterns of play. Now, Man United fans, let me know down in the comments. You know, you watch your team week in, week out. You'll know best. Put it down in the comments below. Should Amorim be playing a transition game, something that suits this squad a little bit better until the end of the season, and then start to tweak things when he has a full preseason underneath his belt, some summer transfer signings? You know, is it a personnel issue? Is it an Amorim issue? And what's the biggest issue that you see at Man United with this current team? Now, the one thing that definitely improved in this game was their out of possession shape. You know, how they defended off the ball. And it did need a little tweak in the first half, and they sat more in a deep block as the game progressed. Now, maybe Amorim's plan was to press high in the early stages, just see if Arsenal are a bit unsettled in their build-up, and then drop into a deep block because of how good they are in the build-up. Or he saw this and then said, nope, we are not doing this anymore. We're going to drop into a deep block. We are not good enough or have the personnel to sort of have that high press. And as sort of Raya has the ball at his feet, Xerxes is the highest striker, Eriksen and Garnacho just behind him, with Fernandes and Casemiro supporting the play. And you can see as Raya passes that ball out to Saliba, this is the kind of movements that Arsenal make in build-up. They just make it so hard for you to press high against them. Odegaard makes a lovely drift into a central position, and Saliba finds him. But look at the energy of Casemiro. And this is where you just don't have the personnel. Man United don't have the personnel for a high press. You know, you've got Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, don't have the real legs to get up and down. Eriksen doesn't have the legs to get up and down. Xerxes just doesn't have the effort or the application to be in that high striker role and know what to do. And Garnacho's probably the only one with a bit of energy that could do a high press if you told him to. But like I said, Odegaard drifts into a lovely little space, lovely little curve run. Casemiro just doesn't want to track him. But it's fine. You know, they still haven't really got out of this situation. But there's one player to keep an eye out for, and that's Mikel Merino. He makes a lovely little drift. He spots Odegaard just leaving that space and leaving it open for someone to maybe move it into. Timber now starts to move up, drag Dalot away. But this is where you expect the centre-back, the left centre-back, to be pushing up. Of Yoro, I think, is in the situation, pushing up to Mikel Merino. You know, they should have still that numerical superiority at the back, but he just doesn't do it. Saliba passes that ball to Odegaard. He recycles it back to Raya. Eriksen tries to press, does really well, does cut off some options, but it's a lovely pass, you know, under high pressure, great composure from Raya. Finds the feet of Mikel Merino, and look at the amount of space around Merino. He has all the time in the world. You know, Casemiro doesn't have any eye on him at all. Probably expects his centre-backs to be pushing up and condensing the space if they're pressing high. But there's such large gaps between that striker and the centre-back in this Man United team when they try and press high. And you can see Merino turns with the ball. He's just able to drive up the pitch 20, 30, 40 yards and get Arsenal on the counter-attack. It ends with an Odegaard shot. But I think Amorim saw this and just said, not anymore. Let's just drop into a deep block, condense the space, move Arsenal to where we want them to. And it did start to work towards that end of the first half and start of the second half. And it's the 13th minute of the game now, and Man United have just dropped to this deep block. They've done it for the rest of the game. They didn't really press too high after that. The back five in that sort of settled shape, and then the midfield four ahead of them with Xerxes up top. And you can see as Timber passes this ball out wide, lovely shape. You know, this is what you want to see. Good defensive shape from Man United. You know, tight centre-backs, tight spaces in between the centre-backs. And then Eriksen working back, tracking back, you know, marking Timber, cutting off the passing option to him. You know, Casemiro getting across, just keeping his eye on the midfield runners from Arsenal. But there's no way for Arsenal to get through here. Nwaneri tries to take on Dalot, cuts back, passes it back to Odegaard. Lindelof's dropped back in, but they still got that settled shape. A nice box shape. condensed spaces. Even if Nwaneri was to receive that ball in the middle of that shape, they're closing him off. They got pressure behind him, and he doesn't really have that many options to play into anyway. And Odegaard then has to pass this ball back to Saliba, and then Saliba tries to play a bit more of a penetrating pass. They weren't really doing this that often. They weren't playing high risk passes that often in the game, but Euro does really, really well. Just gets onto the back of Nwaneri as he takes his touch, nicks the ball away from him. And this is what Man United do best. If they're able to win this ball, then they're on the counter. Garnacho makes a lovely run out wide and they're off and away. And this is how they created the majority of their chances on the transition. Now, Amorim was actually asked about this after the game. Why go to a deep block against Arsenal? And he actually referenced the Ajax game where they went man-to-man, high press, and got torn apart 7-1. And I think he's right. He didn't have the personnel to enact that high press. He doesn't have the time to sort of coach that against a team as good as Arsenal in the build-up. And Arsenal looked toothless throughout the whole of that second half. They only really created a real chance from Declan Rice, and it's just a great finish from the edge of the box. And I think the amount of chances they had on the counter-attack, this definitely suited them against Arsenal and against other big teams as well. But can he do this against a Bournemouth? Can he do this against Leicester at home? The high press doesn't work for Man United, and the mid-block probably suits them better towards the end of the season, until the summer where he has a full pre-season and can coach it with new players in his squad. But there's one player that probably suits a high press, suits a counter-attacking team as well, and he played well in this game against Arsenal, and that's Alejandro Garnacho. And it was actually Garnacho that was able to nick the ball off Trossard, drive with the ball, and then Trossard had to foul him on the edge of the box before he progressed any further, and it was from that free kick that Fernandes scored Man United's one and only goal. If there's one thing you need in this Man United setup, especially when you're playing on a deep block, trying to hit teams on the counter, you need someone that's going to carry that ball. And he had the highest amount of progressive carries in the whole game from Man United or Arsenal, and was far and above any player from Man United in the game. And you can see from this next example where Casemiro wins the ball on a counter attack, and he just plays a lovely simple ball into Garnacho's feet. And this is where you want someone with legs in this Man United system, especially when you're playing on the counter from a deep block. Drives them up the pitch. It's only Xerxes really in support, but this is what Mazraoui does really well. He lovely drive and run just inside of Trossard, who doesn't pick him up. And that's where you're now able to combine. You have players near you that you can combine with. He could go 1v1 here with Calafiori, which he did in the game a couple of times, but he plays a lovely little cute ball into Mazraoui, times that little burst in behind. Calafiori isn't able to keep up with him, but he makes a lovely little cutback cross. He spots Eriksen on the edge of the box, and it's only a fantastic sort of defensive interception from Timber, who just abandons his right back spot, sees the danger from Eriksen and clears it. But this is the kind of situation that was happening time and time again. And Amorim actually mentioned after the game that he thought Garnacho had a really complete game, and it's because of that transition moments that he's really well suited to. And I think you have to remember that he's only 20 years old. I see a lot of these keep, buy, sell, whatever you want to call it videos, and Garnacho's dismissed a little bit for his form over the last year. But he's only 20 years old, and he's still being moved from manager to manager, position to position, and he's not really had a sort of settled position in a team that he knows what he has to do week in, week out. And I think this is one of those players that you have to keep in the squad. You have to find the right position for him and bring the best out of his talent. And it's clear that this team is more suited to a counter-attacking game. The players and the personnel they have, they're not suited to playing a high-press game. They're not suited to playing build-up from the back at this moment in time. It's definitely a coachable aspect in terms of that building up from the back. And that's something where he has to take a bit more onus on trying to improve the team. But if you want to watch my previous video on whether it's the personnel or the tactics, click the video I'll link up here. And I'll see you on the next episode of A Game in Two Halves.